Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. In this video, I break down the latest January monthly report for the Persistent Universe. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members who make these videos possible, in particular to my latest patron, Profeta. Thank you so much for the support. And if you do enjoy my videos, be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps out the channel. So January saw a lot of work and we have a lot to get through, so we won't waste any more time and get started. For gameplay features, the team continued work on the Reputation Mobiglass app, nicknamed the Repdex. This time the designers polished up the design direction while considering the complexity of the Reputation system and its possible future expansions, and the engineers began implementing the feature itself, giving the team a deeper look into the app's functionality. The team also resumed work on the Asset Manager app, which will give players an overview of their items and allow us to filter by various categories. The designs are currently being finalized in prep for a quick turnaround, aiming for a 3.14 launch. For the mission and live content teams, work was mostly done on a new variant of the delivery mission that takes advantage of this quantum-sensitive cargo, with development then moving on to bug fixing and polishing, while some of the team kicked off the timed delivery missions. So these are new delivery missions that take advantage of these new cargo types that we're seeing in the Xeno threat mission. Right now we just have the local multi-stage box deliveries, so including some missions that require you to deliver against the clock will be quite interesting, but for me I am more excited for seeing these long, slow delivery missions where you can just set off sailing in your ship and then wait until you get there. Hopefully we will have the ability to get out of the pilot seat without the ship slowing down though. Now the missions team also looked into ways to utilize the latest features the other teams have been working on, which include body dragging, trolley push and pull, and hacking, and the spawn closet feature moved into its final stages, so the team began prototyping areas that it can be implemented in game. These spawn closets are a big feature, and it's great to see that they are looking to create more missions and using all this other stuff, but I am most excited to see where they can utilize the spawn closets to start bringing AI and populations throughout the verse. Could be cities, space stations, planetside homesteads. These will all benefit from spawn closets. Now the vehicle feature team began the year with pushing to complete docking for 3.13. The team fully integrated docking with the air traffic controller before retroactively changing the Merlin and Constellation docking to use a similar code path for consistency. When implemented, players won't need to call the ATC when docking with the Constellation, but the owner of the ship will need to accept it. I do wonder what will happen though if the owner of the ship dies or despawns or whatever. I'm sure it'll be chaos when docking comes in, but it will definitely be one of the coolest things to watch. Now the team also focused on refactoring missiles to use the IFCS for reliability and tunability, and when complete, IFCS will fully control target tracking and guidance code to ensure that missiles behave more predictably and don't oscillate around the target. This will obviously be a great improvement. It should help both getting missiles on the target as intended and also the use of countermeasures. Lastly, time was dedicated to vehicle naming, with multiple teams working together to get names on the sides of select vehicles. And although there is plenty to do, it's progressing well. It does sound like it's only going to roll out to so many ships, like certain ships, rather than them all. Hopefully that's not the case, but either way, it's a cool feature. So for character and weapon features, as the game grows, so does the number of character animations. So January saw an initiative to improve asset format and compilation. This should give the feature teams faster builds, less memory use, and better load times across their database of animation assets. They are currently developing improvements to runtime performance, starting with planning to ensure they have strong solutions that scale to the size and ambition of the project. Work continued on several features, including hacking, with recent discussions revolving around how to scale the difficulty with consideration for the size of the play area, the number of AI opponents, and randomly generated content, with the features team saying this minigame is shaping up to have a number of interesting strategical options and is looking very promising. Hopefully we'll see a little demo of hacking in an upcoming Inside Star Citizen. So for general AI, the team have been improving debug draw for the special actions component that allows for better understanding of which actions are available at any given time. They also reorganized the AI teams into a more efficient structure to encourage knowledge sharing and a more holistic approach to prioritizing tasks and goals. So the department is now split into content, features, and tech. So for AI content, they worked on early versions of engineering, hygiene, hawker, and tourist behaviors. The first pass on the engineer handles maintenance operations for wall panels inside ships and hangars, including inspecting internal fuses and replacing them if damaged. The initial implementation of the hygiene behavior gives NPCs the ability to use toilets, sinks, and showers, while the hawker is a generic activity that handles various street vendors and speakers, for example NPCs manning hot dog or taco stands. For the first pass on the tourist behavior, this will deal with characters travelling around the areas, looking at points of interest, and the team will also look to introduce new behaviours like leisure and eat and drink activities, such as vending and arcade machine use. Now, the AI features team introduced the first traits affecting AI pilot tactic selection, allowing them to craft more realistic and personal encounters. So, for example, some pilots will choose safer approaches during combat, while others will show off and use special maneuvers. Support for different operator modes begun, which will enable NPCs to correctly use the same new functionalities exposed to players, including setting quantum travel mode when they want to quantum jump, and then returning to default mode afterwards before piloting or fighting. For enemy combat, dodge actions now utilize blend space, allowing NPCs to align correctly when dodging for a more fluid and immersive combat experience. More controls were introduced to define attack action limits and to allow the interruption of combo attacks. And finally, they added the weapon confidence stat that's used to control the firing pace for characters based on their weapon proficiency, so basically determined by each NPC's ability stat. Finally, for AI, the tech team, they implemented new functionality to validate subsumption code events, which allows them to verify bad setups, missing files, and ensure that variables carried by events are configured correctly. The team optimized the subsumption debug task tree and subsumption update. This will reduce runtime allocation, bringing the performance of the internal build closer to the release build. And finally, the subsumption update reduces locks in the memory allocator, with local tests showing that saved around 5 milliseconds when updating 500 active NPCs at a given time. So major improvements to NPCs and AI. And I expect once we get Tony Z's deep dive into quantum and all that kind of stuff, we will see a lot of this in action. So for character art, they kicked off initiatives for 3.14. They created concepts for the medical outfits, backpacks for physical inventories, and work continued on 3 new armor sets. Several clothing assets for the refinery decks and Orison were developed, while new armors were completed for an incremental 3.13 patch. Now, I'm not sure what they could be for, but the medical outfits are most likely for the medical staff at hospitals for when those are opened. But I'm really excited to see more backpack options, and not just backpacks for armors, hopefully backpacks that we can layer over clothing as well. So moving on to environment art, they started full production of a new outpost point of interest archetype for the modular team. A lot of work went into the concept and pre-production stages, with work now beginning on the white box. The next stage is creating a small modular architecture kit that can be easily expanded to add diversity as they need it. Now, I'm not sure what this is exactly for. It does sound very interesting. I have seen certain leaks about sort of a shanty town appearing next to the Javelin wreck. Whether that is true, I don't know, but it does sound pretty cool nonetheless. Now, the landing zone team continued with Orison. All platforms are going into final art phase, with some notably beautiful spaces coming together in the last few weeks. The arcade, most likely referring to a shopping arcade, Spaceport exterior, Voyager bar, which is the rooftop bar we saw in Inside Star Citizen, and the Green Circle hubs, which is most likely Crusader's apartments. All of these are in the final stages of development, with the visual targets for the habitation platform buildings and underside structures currently in progress. I cannot wait to see what Orison's hubs look like. I really hope that they're a big improvement on the new Babbage hubs. It would be so nice if they could just give us a small garden or balcony to just take those views in of Orison and Crusader. Let's hope we see some concept of that soon. Stanton's polish pass continued with the harvestable library expanding, and work on cave entrances that can accommodate vehicles began. They also started developing a pipeline for generating new and updated asteroids. So for the ship art team, they worked on a community favourite ship scheduled to release later this year, with the white box view complete and internal feedback and embedded testing beginning. Maybe this is the Redeemer, but I'm not certain. The team also put the final touches on Redacted, moving it into the final stage. Now, obviously no idea what this could be. Potentially the 400i, perhaps, but we don't know. The constellation Taurus moved down the pipeline, currently scheduled for release in Q2, and another variant was also developed for an upcoming holiday, most likely a Valentine's Day variant, or Coromor, or whatever it's called in lore. The overall tint process was improved to support new vehicle tints throughout the year. Support was given to ship-to-ship docking, lift gravity, signed distance field shields, animation vis areas, and damage. I do wonder if that's physical damage, but it's good to hear that they're providing support for ship-to-ship docking. Obviously, once we get ship-to-station, that would be the next step. The Hercules C2 was handed to the downstream teams, and progress was made on the A2 and M2 variants, with the A2 receiving a control room for the turrets, while the M2 gained a jump seat room for the crew and ground vehicles. The weapon art team continued to work on the Volt Parallax Electron Rifle, taking art to grey box complete. The majority of the mesh was modelled, and the team are currently rigging and animating the weapon before heading further into the final art phase. The Utiliflex Novia crossbow progressed through final art and was handed over to Tech Art to finalise the rig. Also earlier this month, they began investigating magazine stripping to assess what will be needed once this feature work starts, and the team took the opportunity to make a pass on the grip nodes setup. They also added a new healing multi-tool attachment. They updated the battery and resource canister to be detachable to future-proof the weapon for additional functionality. And finally, for FPS weapons, they began work on a new standalone Greycat cutter tool. For ship weapons, work continued on the Firestorm Kinetics Colossus Moab, which moved into the final art, plus development of an all-new ship weapon begun. So loads of amazing work being done there. I am very much looking forward to seeing these medical devices coming in, as well as this new standalone cutter tool. I can only assume it's going to be a standalone salvaging tool for when salvaging does come online, but they are making some great progress. So, onto the engine teams. The physics team completed the first of 3 parts of the geometry instancing, meaning better performance, significantly less memory usage, and vastly reducing CPU cost during asynchronization spawning and terrain physicalization. Work on the next stage will commence later this quarter. So all of this will improve how the characters will collide correctly with everything. So very important, because at the moment, it's a bit of a shambles. In other words, soft bodies, so soft bodies being the character, creatures, armor, and anything that can be deformed like cloth, these were further optimized, and heavy-duty functions were moved to ISPC with a net speedup of 2.5 times on Intel and 2 times on AMD-powered machines. Also, simulation topology now organizes constraints by particle indices, leading to better cache localization, and this yielded another 1.5 times speed up on heavy and dense assets. Soft bodies now perform a single box pruning run for all external collisions to give 50% speed up for external collision detection. So some great performance improvements there, and hopefully it'll solve all of these collision problems that we see, amongst other things. So the existing EVA push and pull control was replaced with a simplified yet more robust scheme. The ongoing switch from VA-driven character ragdoll to regular-driven ragdoll continued. Several network synchronization issues for wheeled vehicles were investigated, which resulted in initial fixes and a plan for an improved net sync. This takes the environment as well as physical movement into account, and this is all slated for implementation in Q2. So basically, the desync that we see comes from the physics system within the memory. CIG are obviously aware of this and plan to solve it in Q2, which is heavily thanks to the iCache coming in and giving them more options to clean this all up, which will result in improved NetSync. So amazing to hear this. Additional research went into large-scale buoyancy calculations that resulted in a prototype solution. The flickering of wheels and casters on trolleys were fixed. and research into stabilizing moving platforms in a more reliable way was completed, so elevator floors and cargo lifts. On the renderer, work on the shader cache backend refactor was completed, while focus is back on the Gen 12 renderer. For volumetric cloud rendering, several improvements and optimizations were implemented. Cloud shadow maps and related render buffers were switched to a more efficient storage scheme that gives significant memory and bandwidth savings, along with slightly improved precision, and cloud shaping started and is progressing well. Hearing all of this work on clouds month by month is really getting me excited to see just what they will look like. It does sound like they are creating something very special for clouds, so let us hope that they show us on an Inside Star Citizen sprint report maybe sometime soon. The graphics team begun by finalizing bugs and features, and once completed they moved on to the Gen 12 renderer, which received various improvements to features like depth of field. Also, a major rewrite of the tessellation shaders was done to streamline the code and fix a number of bugs. The shadow pass conversion was also completed, with the team now looking to see if they can enable this code path by default. The lighting team worked on Orison, improving the spaceport interior, and they worked through a new set of room overlays for non-commercial and refinery space stations. The narrative team worked out all of this year's lore posts, which include some new additions, so I'm excited to get reading them. Work continued on Orison, including scripts for some of the city's announcements and texts for ads that populate the floating platforms. Progress on the reputation system continued, with focus on how to best display lore information, and a wealth of new items and clothing was named and described. Now, the props team worked on trolley push and pull and finished an art det pass on some of the older props in the library. They also moved ahead with prop requests for Orison and started an art pass on mining modules that should conclude at the end of this quarter. I do wonder what these mining modules are. For QA, they began embedding testers within development teams to get a head start on the development cycle, just to help provide detailed information on how features work. They also placed focus on testing AI as well, and support for the engine team ramped up, with one of the testers moving to work alongside them, and they will try to reproduce many of the hard to replicate crashes and provide as much information as possible. It is a great idea embedding QA with select teams so they can work side by side, rather than having random members. Having a dedicated team member will just keep that consistency. So for the system and tools team, they continued with the quantum simulation service integration, along with new technology they plan to share with us all soon, likely in that deep dive that Tony Z has told us about. Now I'm even more excited to see that. This year the team will grow in size to accommodate the growing need for service and support for quantum across many aspects of the game. The team also focused on improving the stability and performance of the backend, which involved fixing several logic issues and crashes that were noticed on the live servers. The Super P cache is now with QA, with the team tuning performance and addressing any issues discovered during testing. So finally, they created new tools for the upcoming reputation system and continued to support the economy with data tools to help alleviate the significant amount of data while they prepare for quantum to take the reins. So some very exciting work happening there. Firstly, I am very happy to hear that they are hiring more and focusing on performance and stability, but also equally happy to see that they are getting in deep with integrating the quantum systems. Hopefully we can see more benefits of that early on in the PU. So Tech Animation kicked off this year by creating animation rigs for creatures that'll be found across the various locations. More mission givers were iterated on alongside refinement of the facial rig authoring tool suite, which will create a refined workflow to give quicker turnaround for high quality facial expressions, and finally a new weapon passed through the rigging pipeline. I really hope that they show us the creatures as they go through the pipeline. I have a feeling that CIG will create something really impressive when it comes to fauna that'll just look and move and react very realistically, so I'm super excited for that. Moving on to Turbulent. Last month, the majority of Turbulent's game services team focused on maintenance. They also began work on tech designs for services that'll come online this year, including the identity service that manages players' life cycles and persistence, and shard and instance management, which was formerly known as matchmaking. For UI, last month UI began programming the underlying system that will allow them to work on the new star map, radar, interior map and minimap interfaces. While it's still several months before it'll be seen in-game, the team already have a robust design tying them together. UI design created plans for an updated options screen, and the vehicle teams were supported with updates to various cockpit UI. Finally, the UI team developed animated concepts for the hacking UI and progressed with screen branding and adverts for Orison. The star map really cannot come soon enough. The vehicle tech team made improvements to the scanning and ping systems to ensure detecting faraway or hidden entities and extracting detail about them is fun and intuitive, and all of these improvements will make their way to player scanning on foot as well. I expect the mission team will use these improvements for exploration missions, allowing us to scan for distant signals that could lead to potential missions or objects that would give exploration ships more of a job in the PU right now. Also, when items are persisting properly, which should be around quarter 2, they could have randomly dotted wrecks for players to find and have some great loot like weapons or inanimate objects of great worth that we can either sell or display in our ships. So the potential here is pretty big for expanding exploration gameplay. So on to visual effects. The VFX team kicked off pre-production for vehicle radar scanning and ping, with the UI team providing concept videos. The visual effects teams are trying to achieve that required visual. Work began on the moons of Pyro, which involved gathering climate details, for example, how windy or hot is it there. The team investigated visual effects requirements for thruster wind volumes as they plan to move to a more physically based setup for vehicle landing dust effects. That is going to look incredible. As ships are landing, they will accurately kick up the environment around them, and as always, it's the finer details that really make a huge difference. They also resumed their work on the new particle lighting model with the goal to convert efforts to the new model. Gen 12 renderer work continued with focus on transparency rendering, and progress was made on fire hazards as well. And finally, the visual effects team provided support for gas clouds and research and development into the destructions pipeline. So that was this month's monthly report. Some amazing work continuing to get done, and I can really see all of these individual systems that they have been working on getting slotted together for the bigger picture. But with that said, I need to go and have a lie down. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you like what you see, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. If you could do the channel a big favour and hit that thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. And if you want to talk more about Star Citizen in general, do head over to my Twitch channel. It is twitch.tv/supermacbrothers. Again, these videos are made possible thanks to my patrons and channel members, so thank you so much for the support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.